Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Fitz and Cole and Gills, your trio, your normal trio. Well, we're not really normal. Your usual trio, I guess. I don't know. Cole worked us into his schedule. You're a busy man, coaching and teaching and doing everything you do. Cole, I'm impressed by your fortitude.
Thank you. It's been quite the fall. I would like to point out, guys, as we record this, I had a tweet on, it would have been Tuesday night, about the Royals and about how bad a certain announcer was for the team. And I currently have more likes on a quote retweet than the MLB. Last time I checked, it was at like 3.6 thousand likes. That's the most likes I've ever got on Twitter. Not very many people like me, but a lot of people agree with me that some announcers are bad. And so it's not just a college football thing. It actually extends into other sports as well. So just want to throw that out there.
Well, let's be clear here. That double play call by Bob Costas was horrific.
It was bad. Bobby
Witt makes a huge play, turns two, and he sounds like someone shot his dog because the Yankees had a double play. Come on, man. It's time to retire, Bob. Speaking of retiring soon, hi, Ryan Gilbert.
Hi.
It's good to have the trio back. Lots going on at Go Powercat right now. We put up the insiders. We recorded that a little bit early last night to clear our way for Chiefs and Royals action, but it is blowing up. Colorado fans are having a blast in the comments. Hey, I just want to tell everyone that because people say nice things about their team or their school that they cover doesn't mean they're trashing yours. Be a little bit more secure. Maybe be a college football fan and not just an NFL guy that came in because a certain head coach was hired. Then, of course, we got the pregame podcast coming. We'll have the Friday walkthrough coming. We'll have what else we got? We'll have the post-game podcast. I got to help you put that together, Cole. I got to check with Monty and Wally, make sure one or both can do it. And we're just cooking. We're cooking here. We got a lot going on at Go Powercat. Make sure you're following this channel. Make sure you're liking this video. And, of course, go check out gopowercat.com. You enjoy all the free stuff we put up at YouTube, but we do some in-depth stuff behind the paywall for VIP customers. And that's it on that. Remember to go to the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. There are friends, there are pals, there are enablers. Yes, they are. I need to get in there for some more fruity vodka like a real man. This is the Questions Podcast. You get to ask the questions if you're a subscriber at Go Powercat. Now let's get rolling with it. You done sneezing there, buddy? You done?
I'm good.
Here's Ryan Gilbert.
First question from KSU Royals Cat. What makes winning on the road so difficult in college football? And how does a team increase their odds of winning on the road?
I think it's hard for a couple reasons. One, in a general sense, I don't know that this applies to the Kansas City Chiefs or the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ryan Gilbert's team. Fans in college are more invested, louder, more passionate, more personal. There's some NFL crowds like that, and I think both of those are. But also, more importantly, is you have grown men doing their profession. And part of their profession is going on the road and being called names and having a loud environment. It's their job. You know, college kids are a little bit different in where they're at in maturity. And sometimes going on the road and hearing things about your mama, that can rattle you. And, you know, you get distracted by these things. You start yapping at fans. Well, they've won. When you're yapping at them, you're not focused on the game. So I think part of it is just the reality that it's a job to some. And college kids aren't mature enough always to handle a road trip like a business trip, which is what it is and what it needs to be. And the great teams have that aura around them. They're not going to go play on the road. They're going on a business trip and they're going to take care of business.
To me, guys, it's a comfortability factor.
It's made up. I love it.
Thank you. You are sleeping in your own bed when you're playing at home. You're playing on the same field that you probably practice on when you're at home. You are around the same people when you go to the training room for lunch that you see every single day. Well, it's different when you're on the road. When you're at home, you kind of know the routine because you're literally having anywhere from 6 to 8 in some cases home game days every single year. You understand that. And so if you multiply that through the course of 4 or 5 years, how many kids actually stay at the same program for 4 or 5 years. But if you multiply that out, you do that probably at least twice as many times as you do going on the road. And when you go on the road, every single place is different. And so I think it really is. It comes down to leadership. I think it comes down to comfortability factors. And if you have a veteran team, it's a lot easier to succeed on the road than if you have a young team. And if you have veteran leadership, I think it's easier to succeed on the road. Guys, I look at what Will Howard was able to do when he was at Kansas State, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it sure felt like his ability to play on the road was very different than, at least in the beginning, than it was at the end of Skylar Thompson. When this Kansas State team went on the road where they had Skylar Thompson, you felt like they had a chance to win. Well, then you flip it over to freshman year, Will Howard. We all can remember some of the games that he played in on the road, and everything was completely different. Well, guys, it kind of feels like we're at the opposite end of the spectrum right now. You have a young player in Avery Johnson, and that first road test, Tulane, I guess if you want to call it a road test, and then the first real test against BYU, hasn't been exactly the most smooth sailing. And so I think that's to be expected. Will they figure it out? I think they will. But I really do think, guys, that it comes down to your leadership and it comes down to how comfortable you are.
I agree. Feels
Good teams are able to bounce back from the mistakes that happen on the road, whether that's a turnover or a scoop and score on a fumble or a fluky muffed punt that somehow gets returned for a touchdown, right? Good teams are able to shake those off. Obviously, Kansas State wasn't able to really do that in Provo, but great teams are able to just not have those plays happen altogether. I know some of those fluky plays you can't control, but playing on the road, you have to take care of the football. You can't let the momentum swing. You can't let the crowd get involved. You can't let those factors really become factors. So that's the biggest thing for Kansas State in this Colorado game, is not giving the Buffaloes really a chance to do what BYU did. And I know Tulane was kind of just a weird game overall. K-State didn't play good. Don't give them a chance to do that. Play clean, crisp football, and that's the biggest key to winning on the road.
Agree. Just go out there and execute and try to tune things out. It's not easy. I understand that, but I look at myself, Gills and I are going to the game. We'll have to go park in a different parking lot. We'll have to go walk up a hill. We'll have to go and find the door to go in. We'll have to, everything's different. Your whole routine gets disrupted. And that's more true for a football team. Busing and flying and busing and hotel rooms and meeting rooms and conference rooms. It's all different. It's a business trip. Get busy. And if K-State can learn that, this is going to be a really good team. But I'm telling you, the team that's gone on the road twice this year is going to get beat at Colorado if that's how they play. Period.
And it comes down to this: you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's you have to want to thrive in those moments. And I get the sense, and we've talked about this from the quarterback and with Avery Johnson, but I really do get the sense that he is going to show how much he learned against BYU when he takes that over into the Colorado game. I know I mentioned earlier it was a test at Tulane. It was more like a pre-test. If we're talking about school, that was a pre-test. Just kind of see where you were. They had their first test at BYU. Now this team has been able to know what it's like to play on the road in a hostile environment. And as we've talked about before, I'm not so sure that Boulder, if Kansas State can get out to a good start, is going to be as hostile as a Provo would have been if they had gotten out to a hot start. Now, obviously they didn't, and Provo, we'll never know because Provo was electric. But I really feel like if you can kind of silence that crowd early, then Kansas State has a really good shot to win this game.
Well, BYU, Kansas State better have learned some lessons from that game, right? You're playing in elevation once again. You're having a very late kick once again, so you have a whole day to kill before. I know that the crowd, it's going to be loud, but it's going to be a lot different than BYU, with maybe how nice or not nice the fans might be, but it's still going to be a loud crowd at the end of the day, right? So Kansas State, with what happened in Provo, you better have learned some stuff, maybe do some stuff differently so that stuff doesn't happen again in Boulder.
That's a good use of the word stuff.
Thank you. It's like an Oreo, double stuff, triple stuff.
We were very stuffed up there. Yep.
From Powercat Ryan, can the game at Colorado be won in the trenches, or will it come down to our defensive backs providing great coverage?
Well, I mean, football is complex, but yeah, if you control the trenches, you're typically going to win. But let's be honest here. Colorado's been able to run the ball a little bit better than last year. Shedeur Sanders is used to running for his life. So, offensively and defensively, if you control the trenches, it puts you at a big advantage. I'll go that far. It puts you at a significant advantage. But great teams or great players can overcome some of those things and find a way to win. But I do think it'd make it very hard on any opponent. If they're getting beat up at the point of attack, they're getting pushed back off the line of scrimmage, you're going to have problems winning any game. It's just going to be hard to function.
Kind of what we talked about on the insiders. I feel like K-State being better than Colorado on the offensive and defensive lines is a given. Would you two agree with that? Like, I feel like everybody universally believes that. And so if they're not, then you have an issue if you're Kansas State. Like, if Colorado comes in and is better than you, than you when you're on offense and they're on defense, and they're better than you when you're on defense and you're on offense from a line perspective, you're in real trouble, because then they're going to be able to run the ball. Then they're going to be able to stop the run. On top of that, we know how dynamic their playmakers are. And so, yeah, I mean, K-State has to be better in the trenches if they want to win this game. With that being said, it's kind of the inverse of what we talked about. They don't have to fully be better in pass protect, or they don't have to fully be better in coverage against Colorado's receivers. They just have to be able to compete. You don't have to win every single thing in the secondary. You got to win a few things. You got to be able to keep the ball in front of you. You got to be able to not get beat deep. But if you give up a 20-yard pass play for a completion and a first down, that's going to happen. You're not going to be able to completely neutralize Travis Hunter, Horn, and Shedeur Sanders. You're just not going to be able to do that. But if you can do it occasionally, then that puts you in a much better spot, because you already feel like you have the advantage in the trenches. And so, it's a complex matchup, because very rarely do we see a team have such a disadvantage in the trenches and such an advantage on the outside. I mean, that just doesn't happen. Usually, if you're a bad football team, you're a bad football team. And if you're a really good football team, then you're a really good football team. But Colorado's kind of like a really bad football team and a really good football team thrown together.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like Cole, I'm going to talk baseball. I'm stealing it from you. It's almost like a team that doesn't field the ball well, doesn't particularly play defense well at all in any way, or, that's not who they are. And they swing at too many pitches, but they got four guys that can crush the ball out of the park. Mm-hmm. It equalizes it out. And that's kind of what Colorado's got, some home run hitters, and it's huge.
Really what I said earlier about playing clean and crisp, right? That's probably the easiest way to not let things unravel on the road, the easiest path to victory. Guys, that all starts in the trenches. So, K-State doesn't necessarily, that's not the way to win, but it can be the way to lose. If you don't control the trenches in this game, it's going to be much tougher to win.
I think that too. I mean, can Kansas State win by just controlling the trenches and giving up the big plays and making this game a shootout where Colorado throws the ball for 400 yards and Kansas State rushes the ball for 300 yards? Can they win that game? I think there is a world in which that does happen, because if Kansas State's able to control the clock on offense and score the ball and finish with touchdowns and make Colorado play catch up, I do think that Kansas State can win the game that way. Now, ideally, they don't want to do that, but can they give up the big plays on defense and still win the game if they control the line of scrimmage? I do. I think they can.
Good.
From Roy Hobbs. So the username, I don't have the username here, but the username was something different, and it says from Roy Hobbs. So we're going to go with from Roy Hobbs.
That would be
Yeah,
L1064 from our friend L1064.
Cole's got it. Cole's got it on here. Okay.
Yeah.
Our defense puts zero pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Who's at fault, and how can Klanderman fix this before Colorado lights us up?
I don't know what team you've been watching. Seriously, what are you saying? How many times did Alan Bowman throw the ball away? If you think pressure is only about sacks, Well, they're being very careful. Fafita, pressure, throw the ball away. Bowman, a thought of pressure, throw the ball away. I mean, even the BYU quarterback had some pressure, but that dude can run. That's the problem here is Shedeur Sanders can run. They're not going up against a guy that is going to want to be in the pocket, and if he gets too much pressure, he's just going to dump the ball and not, take an incompletion, not a sack. You're dealing with a guy that if he gets too much pressure, will tuck and run, or he'll get out on the edges and throw the ball with great effect. Yeah, they haven't had great sack numbers since the start, but Brendan Mott's been harassing quarterbacks. And sometimes the interceptions on the back end aren't because of just being in the right place. The throw was forced to go somewhere, and that was really the case with Bowman. He just kept making throws, panicking at the side of pressure, and most were just thrown out of bounds or horribly thrown where no one could catch it, and others were thrown to the wrong team. I think they've been pressuring the quarterback a lot. Getting him on the ground, not enough. They got it, as Big B's been saying, they got to get Shedeur Sanders on the ground if they get back there.
So Colorado has allowed Shedeur Sanders to be sacked 17 times this season. And Kansas State has sacked the quarterback 12 times this season. If we're just looking at this Kansas State versus Colorado matchup, we'll just go ahead and dive deep into the numbers here. Colorado's only sacked 10 people. And so if we're comparing who has better sack numbers, it's unequivocally Kansas State. They have been able to pressure the quarterback. Fitz, you mentioned it's not all about sack numbers. But you know what? I'll take 12 sacks. That is what? Just a little over 2.5, close to 3 sacks per game. I think if you ask me would you be happy if Kansas State can sack the quarterback almost 3 times a game? I was like, yes. Like, again, I just go back to this guy. It's like, this isn't the NFL. And so I think people watch college football. They watch Kansas State. They don't have Felix Anudike-Uzomah. They don't have a guy who is going to be able to be a consistent pass rusher who can get to the quarterback on any given down. It is by committee. Has Brendan Mott been very good? Yes. But it is by committee, and they get their pressure by blitzing, and that's okay, because when you rush 3 and you blitz a linebacker, you know what 3 + 1 is, guys?
I gotta take a shoe off.
That is 4. That's also how many people they like to pressure when they have a 4-man front. So I don't know. I'm kind of with you, Fitz. Like, the numbers aren't amazing for the sack numbers for K-State's defense, but they do a good job of getting pressure, no doubt.
They do. They do that, and that's going to be a key element here. Tying these two questions together, you don't just need to win the line of scrimmage. You need to do something with it on top of that. Now, when it comes to taking away a run game, winning the line of scrimmage is significant, but they can still throw the ball with great effect, even if you're getting pressure. Even if you have won the line of scrimmage, a player like Shedeur Sanders can make you pay. In fact, if he stretches you out, he can really expose something on the back end of your defense. So that is something definitely you need to make pressure, squeeze that pocket, keep him contained, all of that stuff. There's more to it than just getting the sack, but bottle him up. Don't give him a clean sight down the field and see what happens.
Gilbert, any idea how many times Avery Johnson has been sacked this year?
6 times.
He's been sacked 4.
4?
Okay.
So Shedeur Sanders has been sacked more than 4 times as much as Avery Johnson. Now, granted,
you're doing way too much math here.
The passing attempts are not as many. I know we're doing a lot of math on this show, but still, the drop back per sack percentage is great. So I know, Fitz, you said that Shedeur Sanders likes to get out of the pocket and escape, but I think that statistic kind of shows you're going to have your opportunity to sack Shedeur Sanders.
Let's be blunt. That Colorado offensive line at times is so out of whack. You get clean shots at the quarterback. You get direct paths to the backfield. It's been a mess. It's getting better. We'll see how they operate on Saturday night, because that's going to be a huge element in this game. Who can actually contain, pressure, distract, and sack the quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
Back to the question just for a sec. Getting to the quarterback. If you want more pressure, right? If you want to get to the quarterback more, if that's what you really truly want, then you're going to have to bring more guys, bring more pressure to create that havoc in the trenches. You're just going to have to bring more guys. If that's what you truly want, you have to bring more guys. And what's going to happen if you do that? You leave the secondary exposed, where K-State's had some issues in zone. And so you got to pick your poison here. with pressure or keeping a lid on things. Kansas State's defense recovered nicely, I think, against Oklahoma State after that flea flicker. Played well against Arizona after the opening drive, but certainly a group that has had its issues in the secondary with not letting other teams hit the home run. So blitzing more does not help that.
You brought up a great question. I don't know if we've got a question about this. Guys, what do you think the chances are Colorado runs at least one flea flicker? I'd say, I wish that was a prop bet. I'd take yes on that. I mean, K-State has gotten torched twice by that play because the safeties in this defense have to come screaming to the line of scrimmage to support the run. So you give that little run pitchback thing and they're heading the wrong direction. So it's been a really effective play. I almost guarantee you Colorado will do it.
From last question of the first half, it's from Oiler Cat 2. I'm sure Dylan Edwards wants to have a good game against Colorado, but I wonder how his teammates feel about it. Does a transfer fit with the culture of this team, or does it take time to earn respect from them?
Well, when you're best friends with the quarterback, you come in with a certain status that, they're going to buy into it. I don't think Dylan's talking about it, though. Dylan has not wanted to even really delve into Colorado. I know he did it like on was it an NIL podcast?
Yep.
And I think he just wants to move on. He's a football player at Kansas State. And I did ask Avery Johnson about that. And, Avery said, we haven't even talked about it. So, maybe that's just because it was a Monday press conference and they're not really into CU game week when we have that press conference. But I don't think it'll be a major factor for the team per se, but I guarantee you they're aware of it. And if there's a level of abuse or nastiness towards Dylan, I think the team will respond in defense of him because he's bought into everything at K-State, and he has been a really good teammate, a good member of the locker room, and I think guys respect him for that.
There's going to be a lot more smack talking on the Colorado side than there will be on the K-State side, right? Like those Colorado guys, there's no way that, it goes both ways, right? Because Colorado acquires transfers, but there's also a lot of guys that transfer out of there. And so I understand that there's probably a lot of new faces on this Colorado defense that didn't have to go against Dylan every day in practice. But I guarantee you, there are guys on that defense who the first thing that they are going to be told to do is when you hit number 3, make sure you let them know about it. And I don't know if that message will necessarily come from Dion or if that message will come from guys on the offense, but there will be some smack talking going on. And I have a feeling that Dylan is not going to be the first guy to say anything. And I'm not suggesting that Colorado is going to play dirty or try and take cheap shots or anything like that. But, there's going to be some guys who think, hey, you were on our team last year and you left us. And there's going to be guys that feel a certain way about that for Colorado. And I would assume that Dylan understands that. And honestly, I would probably assume that there's a conversation that's going to be had, if one hasn't been had already, with Chris Kleiman or Connor Riley, Matt Wells to Dylan, just about, hey, be ready for this and don't respond, because that's a great way for them to get inside your head if you're Dylan Edwards, and you can't let that affect you. Fitz, you talk about playing on the road. I mean, those students, those fans are going to be on Dylan like stink on crap, and it is going to be that analogy you didn't like. Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, you just maybe some crap smells good. Why do you just associate crap with smelling bad? I don't know. No. Gilbert's crap probably smells like flowers. I don't know.
But you guys will have to give me an update, not on if crap smells like stink or stink smells like crap, whatever it is. But if you guys get any update or see any signs of the smack talk with the CU fans to Dylan, I am interested to see how that goes.
Gilbert, your thoughts?
I mean, yes, Cole, some of those Colorado players might have some things to say to Edwards, but like, how many guys returned from last year? Like 12?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like Chris Kleiman's locker room is light years ahead of where Dion's locker room is at with Colorado. You're not going to let anybody into your locker room unless they are a good fit. Why did they continuously go after Dylan Edwards after he decommitted? It's because they wanted him inside of that locker room. And so I think Dion would take anybody that can play football. Chris Kleiman is not just going to let your average, jock into your locker room. And so I have no concerns with really anything revolving around Edwards. He's a mature guy, a mature young man. And I think K-State's going to be just fine with regards to Edwards playing his former team.
I do too, guys. But again, Fitz, and I'll leave you with this. I just worry that Dylan wants to play so good, so bad. And like sometimes as an athlete, when you're trying so hard, that can make you, quite honestly, not play as well.
You're right.
So I worry a little bit about that with Dylan, just because he's trying to do the right thing so bad. He wants to play so well for his team because he knows that where he's at now is where he's supposed to be. He wants to help his guys out so bad that maybe he muffs a punt or he drops a crucial pass or something like that. And so finding a way to stay level-headed, I think, with Dylan is what this Kansas State offense needs, because we haven't been talking about this, but he can be a difference maker in this game on Saturday.
I agree. I have some more thoughts on Dylan Edwards returning home to Boulder, where he played his freshman year under Deion Sanders. I'll share those on, I guess it's today's daily delivery. You can check that out at the Go Powercat YouTube channel or at gopowercat.com. The daily delivery is daily, it's free, and it's delivered. See, that's the whole name thing. That's it. This is the Powercat Podcast, the questions variety, the normal weekly one. And we're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Let's get a message from them and other sponsors. We'll be back right after this.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. I'm Tim Fitzgerald, publisher, Go Powercat. One side I got Cole Carmody. The other side I got Ryan Gilbert, part of my staff, our staff here at gopowercat.com. And if you're not subscribing to this channel, to the magazine, we don't have a magazine anymore, Fitz. Man, that was a flashback. To the website, please do so. You can subscribe to the magazine. It just won't ever show up anymore because we haven't done it in like 6 years. So let's get going again with your questions, Wabash Station, and we appreciate the ongoing support of the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Go visit Kevin and the gang at the Fridge whenever you are in MHK. There's no liquor store quite like it in Manhattan and maybe the state of Kansas. I haven't been to them all, but I've tried. On with the questions from Wabash Station. Ryan Gilbert, take it away.
From Cat in Colo, none of the 5 teams currently undefeated in the Big 12, Texas Tech, BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, West Virginia, were preseason favorites. Thus, it's very possible that no one will finish undefeated, and we end up with multiple 1 or 2 loss teams requiring tiebreakers to determine the championship game. Would this help or hurt for getting more than one team into the college football playoff in the Big 12?
Well, it depends on how many losses. Let's just say, hypothetically, K-State and Utah in the regular season with 1 loss apiece in the conference. They're going to the championship game at 11-1. I would imagine an 11-2 loser of that championship game will have a much greater chance of getting in the playoff than what a lot of the prognosticators indicate. They just do. I mean, I can't imagine a committee taking a 8-4 team over an 11-2 team. I just don't see it, but we'll see how it plays out. We really don't know what's going on inside that committee, but I do agree that this is chaos even by the Big 12 standards. But also you look at who's up there and who they played and where they played. There's not a whole lot of great wins. You got the best win Colorado's had is at UCF. That was a nice win. It was certainly significant, but that's a mid-conference team at best. And they have been, even though some thought they might be playing for a playoff spot, which I never thought so. I mean, Iowa State won at Houston. Until last week, Houston was dead in the water. So we're early in the process. There's a lot of football to be played, and you're exactly right. The point of this question is spot on. If this conference has a couple of 2 or 3 lost teams breaking tiebreakers to get to the championship game, folks, the champion's going to be the only one who gets in. That's just the reality. And when you're a conference like the Big 12 and you cannibalize each other, it means you're bad. If you're the SEC and you cannibalize each other, It's because you're good. And that's just the way it is. The Big 12 gets the benefit of the doubt going the other way in basketball. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But if the good teams want to be the teams perceived as the good ones at the start of the season want to be there at the end of the year, they better start playing actually good football on a consistent basis, which apparently Kansas State, Utah, certainly Oklahoma State haven't done this year.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the standings, guys. I'm kind of taking a glance at these right now. And I mean, I can't get over the eye test with some of these teams. Like they're not consistent enough to project out to the end of the season. Gilbert, and I know you tweeted something on Tuesday about the odds makers with who's favored to win the Big 12. I believe Kansas State and Utah are still the two favorites right now. And I look at the schedules, guys, and I'm like, who do I trust the most? And Texas Tech is 3-0 in this conference, but that 3-0 is completely muddled because they almost lost and should have lost their first game of the season to Abilene Christian. They got smoked on the road by Washington State. And then they played Arizona State, Cincinnati, and they had a nice win at Arizona. I don't know what to make of Arizona. Arizona could be good. They could be bad. I don't know. That team is so weird. But would it surprise me if Texas Tech maybe doesn't run the table, but finishes the year with one Big 12 loss? No, it wouldn't surprise me. But would it surprise me if they lose at home to Baylor, at TCU, and at Iowa State, or those three next games? Would it surprise me if they lose two of those? No, it wouldn't. Like, nothing surprises me in this conference. Honestly, guys, I'm being so serious right now. The biggest surprise to me in this conference would be if Kansas State finds a way to lose more than one game the rest of the season. I don't see a way that this Kansas State team loses more than one game the rest of the way. And if that happens, I feel like they have a pretty good chance to be in the Big 12 championship.
Ryan, before you go, I want to say Iowa State has been on my radar since before the season. I was on that bandwagon. This is a good team. Matt Campbell did a great job coaching that team, through that season last year and got them a lot better by season's end. They were young. They come back. They're really good. This game, this week, Iowa State goes to West Virginia. We're going to find out a lot about either one of those teams, and either one of them will be pretty well positioned. But Cole, I want to remind you, K-State's got to close at Iowa State.
Yep.
These back-to-back road games are not easy at Colorado and West Virginia. They're both better than maybe what we perceived at season start. So I can see them losing a couple more. Would it be less than ideal? And K-State fans see it as kind of a massive failure? Yeah, probably, but I can see it. I can see it because the chaotic nature of this conference requires a team to step forward and assert their ability, assert their dominance. And I just don't see that team right now. Maybe it's Kansas State once Avery Johnson matures and gets some, road fangs, so to speak. He gets a little tougher out there on the road. Maybe it's them. Maybe if Utah gets back Cam Rising, maybe it's them. Oklahoma State, I'm writing you off. I'm sorry. It's not working. And Arizona, I like roller coasters. I think they're really fun. But I don't want to be on a roller coaster if it's my team. And they've been so up and down. It's crazy. West Virginia's positioned, Tech's positioned. Let's let it sort itself out. Gills?
Yeah, I will disagree with you, Mr. Bullish Carmody. If Kansas State was playing at home for every game for the remainder of the year, absolutely. But man, I need to see something because those road struggles are real. They're concerning for this team, and it doesn't just stem. I mean, it goes back to the last couple of seasons for Kleiman's teams as well. So K-State's got to prove that it can win on the road before I'd feel comfortable really thinking that this team can win a Big 12 title. But that being said, you look around the rest of the conference, there is not a single team that doesn't have some sort of red flag or flaw on its resume. Half the undefeated teams in league play had garbage non-conference slates. And so it's an unpredictable league. I don't feel comfortable with any team, and that includes Kansas State, because like I said, those road struggles are real and they're concerning. Maybe
you guys are correct. And I think that there's a good chance that you are. But I just look at what this team has from a talent perspective, and I look at what the other teams in the conference have from a talent perspective. And then I look at what Kansas State has shown on a consistent basis. They have been consistently good outside of 5 minutes of one game. And I'm not trying to piddle away the loss at BYU. And quite frankly, maybe not 5 minutes. We'll say maybe closer to 35 minutes if you want to count the first half at Tulane. But in that second half, they were really good. And so they had the 5-minute period at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half against BYU and the first half against Tulane. Other than that, this team has been really good. And so I agree, Gills, that I want to see something on the road, but I think that's why this game is so important, because if they go into Boulder and take care of business, I think a lot of people are going to be picking this team to win the Big 12. Regardless of what happens with Iowa State and West Virginia on Saturday, I've seen what West Virginia can do. I've seen West Virginia be really bad, and I've seen them play good for their standard, right? It's all relative for their standard. I don't know if the highs of West Virginia match the highs of Kansas State. So if Kansas State plays a good game against Colorado, and if they play a good game against West Virginia, which we've seen them play good games before, I think they take care of business against both teams. And then suddenly you look at the rest of their schedule, and the biggest game of the season is the last one against Iowa State. And so you're right. If they can find a way, if they play bad, they could very easily lose these next two games. But if they find a way to make it out of these next two games, they are going to be the favorites to play in Arlington. And part of that is because, guys, if you just want to talk about Vegas, they're going to be favored in arguably every single game the rest of the season. So that's kind of my standpoint on it.
Okay.
From WCAT, kind of going off of this a little bit, what the hell is going on with the AP poll? SEC teams lose but remain highly ranked. Is this bias the future of college football?
I just explained it. I mean, you lost because the SEC is so good. And now they're going to try to claim Vanderbilt's going to be a great football program. They might be improving, but there's no way to argue that isn't a historically bad loss for Alabama football. It hasn't happened. And everyone in the SEC knows Vanderbilt's better than what they have been, but they're still not great. I'm with you. The SEC bias right now in the poll is kind of sickening. I mean, Kansas State loses at BYU. Grant didn't play well, got blown out on the scoreboard, drops 10 spots. You lose at Vanderbilt, historically the worst Power 5 program, and you just barely drop. Come on, man. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But I want to emphasize this. Voters are dumb. And what I mean by that is there is no way, if there's like 30, 35, 40 relevant teams to track for a poll, there's no way you can fully keep track of all of those teams and actually what's going on with the inner workings of it and how they're good or how they're bad. It's impossible. And what ends up happening is you vote by reflex. I just caught myself doing it in my own Big 12 poll. I voted Oklahoma State, I voted TCU higher simply because I'm recalling TCU's success going to the national championship 2 years ago. Well, this team isn't that team. Will you please just vote on teams based on what they're doing within the season? Not what you thought they would do, not what they did last year, not what they've done for the last 10 or 50 years. Vote on the teams that are playing on the field, no matter what the emblem is on their helmet this year. And I know that makes your job immensely difficult, maybe impossible, unless you're full-time running a poll. I'll trust Kelly Ford and his rankings over any AP voter. So just understand that. The real importance here is who's making the selections for the playoff. That's a separate vote. That's a separate poll that done around a table of people face to face, not scrambling in an airport to write down 25 teams and submit your ballot. That's what a lot of voters do. They just covered a game on Saturday. They got to get their votes in. They might stay up late Saturday. They're exhausted. They send them in, or they do it Sunday while they're traveling. I'll take a committee sitting around a table and talking and arguing, bring up facts, really studying the situation over any poll. And I say that as a member of the media, and I look into the camera with full honesty. We're not qualified to vote. We're not. Almost all of us cover a team, or we're at a game, watching that game. And thus we rely on ESPN to show us highlights. Well, who is ESPN showing the most highlights of based on who they're invested in? That's the SEC. So I've long said this. I think there should be a poll of people that are producers, desk people, if there still exists in the newspaper industry, people that watch games on Saturday that are in the college football realm of media, but they actually get to sit around and watch games and really study games and read about games. A lot of national beat writers are qualified to do that because they do the homework. That's their entire job. My job is to study the Big 12 and Kansas State. I'm not qualified to vote nationally, nor have I ever chosen to do so. I don't even like to vote in Big 12 preseason polls. I focus on Kansas State, but now with our Big 12 Insiders channel, I'm opening that up quite a bit, and I feel much more knowledgeable. Most beat writers aren't. That was a long answer. I'm done.
Is this where I say the Ryan Gilbert quote?
Go for it.
I agree.
There you go. You used it well. I know that ESPN's FPI is probably skewed a little bit to favor SEC teams, but I would much rather look at an algorithm or some analytics.
Yeah.
I know people have their opinions on PFF, but you're going to get a much better grasp for a team with stuff like that, where yes, there might be some bias baked in. Sure. I'm not going to deny that, but it's not just somebody like you said, Fitz, just putting a group of 25 teams together. So, but real quick, man, I could give a crap about Bama's loss to Vanderbilt. Oklahoma State is like probably the worst team I've ever covered ever. And that Arkansas team somehow lost to them. That's what's so alarming for the SEC in my eyes.
I agree. I totally agree. That, I'm a big proponent of every game self-contained. That, anyone can upset anyone. We just saw it last weekend. But that transaction of events, having Oklahoma State rally to beat Arkansas, they didn't play well, but they did win. And then have Arkansas go ahead and beat one of the top teams in the SEC that was thinking about a national championship. That's just hard to wrap my mind around if the Big 12 is that much worse than the SEC. I think it indicates that it isn't. I don't think there's as giant a gap as people want to say. And I'll accept that from maybe some of the elite teams, but Alabama beats Georgia. Alabama loses to Vanderbilt. I'm not finding the elite in any of that so far this year. I think the expansion and realignment is going to open some eyes here. What are we seeing in the Big Ten? The schools from the Pac-12 are competing.
Yep.
They're beating people. They're losing some games they might win, and they're winning some games they thought they'd lose. What are we going to see in the SEC? Texas, that has won one Big 12 title in recent memory, might be the best team in the SEC. They didn't become good because they joined the SEC. They were good in the Big 12, as was Oklahoma. And teams in the conference competed with them. Don't act like Texas ran the conference. They didn't. They hadn't won until last year. Oklahoma ran the conference more than Texas. But that all evened out in the last 5 years. It all leveled out. The competition was incredible with Texas and Oklahoma. You move those to the SEC and they're competitive there? Go figure. I don't understand how that happened. Oh, they just got better because now they're SEC. Now they got the SEC patch, so they're better. Got it. Come on, folks. Come on. Just back up and look at things. If you're an SEC writer and you think all things SEC are superior to everyone else, you're not doing your job. Don't be voting on any polls. You're a homer for a conference. And that's worse than being a homer for a team.
Also, guys, Michigan's number 24 in the polls. You realize they're one of the worst passing teams in all of Division I football, and that includes not just Power 4, but the rest of FBS, they literally don't have a passing game. And they're 4-2. And so they're ranked number 24 in the country. I don't get it, guys.
That's ridiculous. But that M is notable. I know what that is. That means Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay. Cole, next question. We and you can just take this one off for Fitz. What are the odds that the Big 12 can secure the services of a CBS or TNT like Fox and ESPN do for Big 10 and SEC respectively? I'd think that catapulting to a network, especially CBS with college basketball ties, that the Big 12 is a value conference where you don't have to pay absolutely through the roof for content. They get a very solid to good football conference and the basketball conference and the best basketball conference. Seems like a great deal where both sides win. Thoughts?
It's going to be interesting because the way the contracts are set up puts ESPN at a huge advantage, an enormous advantage. And, of course, the Big 12 has Fox too. I said this in a recent daily delivery that, the Big 12 has relationships with Fox and ESPN, but the Big 12's in the friend zone. Their passion is for the Big 10 and SEC, but you can be that friend that gets to go to lunch once in a while. Yeah, and that's the truth. And so there's going to be 1 year or 6 months or something where ESPN has all their open. They're the only one you can negotiate with, and the same will be true with Fox. There's a period when it's not open, and the Big 12 wisely didn't leave that period and sign the contract last time around. It was the checkmate on the Pac-12 that let the Big 12 survive. You can't do that this time unless there's something going on so seismic that you're just holding on to the rope for dear life. The contract doesn't come up till 31, so negotiations really won't hit till 30, and it might start running late. Just like the Pac-12 put it off too long. It's a balancing act. But I do, in my heart, believe until you establish your own footing in your own place, which would be TBS in particular, because they have a nominal amount of college sports, but also CBS because they have a platform that can promote your football. I know being on CBS sports channel isn't like even equivalent to ESPN2, but that's because they're doing Mountain West games and other games that maybe you aren't even interested in. I think that changes with the Big 12. And I think Paramount Plus as a platform is interesting. They're running a lot of college football on Paramount Plus. Now, maybe right now it's not teams you really want to watch that have a national focus, but they're doing it. And that tells me they're building up the ability to do it well. They're not going to just dive into the Big 12 and start streaming and be the first ones. I think Brett Yormark's connections to Turner, TBS, whatever their background is now, I can't remember who owns it now at this point as I sit here. It's crucial. They've been an NBA platform. They're not anymore. They're going to be looking. Maybe they'll sign a deal earlier than later with someone else. But I think that is exactly where the Big 12 at this point needs to end up, with TBS and CBS being their front runners. And, I look at CBS and NBC. What are you spending money on? What was the game that NBC has this week and they're putting in prime time? It was absolutely awful.
Not this week. Well,
next week.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, come on. What you guys spend a lot of money to show teams that really no one is outside of the Big 10 is caring about.
That would have been Iowa and Ohio State.
That's this week.
Well, that was last week. Week. Yeah.
I mean, look, you get Ohio State. I get it. You show them, but oh man, the Big 12's got to find its own place in the world and get out of the friend zone. It just does. Go have a meaningful relationship with a different network. That's my advice.
The only thing I'll add to that, Fitz, is if the Big 12 signs with TBS, please, God Almighty, do not let Bob Costas call any K-State games.
Yes. I wish I was watching. I caught up on some sleep Monday night, so I didn't watch really any of the Royals game, but I'm such a critique of, you know this, Cole, you lived with me for years, like watching sports. I'm such a critic of sports broadcasters. So I kind of wish I was watching to know how bad it was, but also given what we've heard, I guess I'm happy I wasn't watching.
And you talk about announcers as we kind of wrap this whole thing up, guys. K-State fans are going to be frustrated with the broadcast on Saturday. Just you guys aren't going to have to deal with it. But fans, just understand that you are not the only ones who have to listen to Mark Jones and Roddy Jones call a Colorado game. It seems like they might as well live in Boulder and cover the team. I feel like every time I turn Colorado on when they're on ESPN, those two guys are doing the game. So K-State fans, just get ready for it. Brace yourselves. And if you want, you can flip on K-State Sports app and listen to Wyatt Thompson and Stan Weber too.
Or I'll just call you and talk during the game.
There you go.
There won't be much substance. There'll be a lot of bad puns and dad jokes.
And making fun of Ryan Gilbert. Yep.
I'll sing Ryan Gilbert's name during the national anthem. That's
Uno Mas. We got one more. Last question of the pod is from Ghost Day Kate. What record do the Wildcats have heading into the bye week? And of course, it's the 2 games with West Virginia and Colorado, KU at home, and then Houston's on the road.
No, they better be 8-1. I mean, they should be. They're going to be favored in all those games. They should be. But it is 3 out of 4 on the road, which is wonderful scheduling in the heart of the conference by the Big 12. Hey, between those 2 off weeks, you're going to play 3 out of 4 on the road. Have fun.
Yeah.
So this is the crucial stretch. This is starting Saturday. If this team wants to be who we think this team can be, they better start playing the role.
Yep. I've already said what I think. So I think Kansas State will win at Colorado. I think they'll win at West Virginia. I think they'll beat KU. And then that would mean they would also beat Houston. So I do think that they'll win all 4 of those games. If I had to pick the closest call, probably going to be West Virginia. I think Kansas State can win this game against Colorado by double digits. But even if they don't, I think they will be it will be a lot more comfortable than the final score may indicate.
You guys are gonna come after me, man. I'm gonna go 2-2 for the next 4 games. I don't feel comfortable with this team on the road. In Kansas, you guys are gonna hate me saying this. Kansas has been in every single one of its losses. They've been so close. We can't forget about our preseason expectations for Lance Leipold's team. He's a quality coach. I don't see that team giving up. Maybe they will. Maybe they will after the losing streak they're on. But unless I can see something here against Colorado on the road where this team can prove it can win away from home, I think 500 is where K-State goes the next 4 games.
Okay, let me ask it this way. All those next 4 games, who do you think is the most dangerous team that K-State plays? Cole?
I think West Virginia.
Okay.
I mean, I guess Colorado maybe is the right answer, but I think West Virginia simply because if you beat Colorado, then you go on the road again to a West Virginia team who is playing at home at night, and he's either going to be coming off of a big win or coming off of a loss, and they still get another night game. So that's a tough game. I would probably say West Virginia.
I think Colorado has the highest ceiling of any of the next 4 teams, so I would go Colorado with the playmakers they have. But I would love to see what happens with West Virginia this weekend, and then maybe that can give us a better sense of maybe how dangerous that game looks or not.
I will agree that Colorado has the most talent, the most upside, the highest ceiling. But I think Kansas is sitting at its floor right now. And it might even be hanging on to the floor because it's about to fall beneath it. I mean, it's losing 5 straight games that you led in the second half, 4 of which you led in the fourth quarter is unthinkable. And whatever's gone wrong in the fourth quarter, if you fix that, you might turn into a pretty damn good football team. Jalen Daniels doesn't turn the ball over. You figure out what's going on in defense late in game situations where teams can just march up the field and score if they want to. You might return to being good because you're not far off from being good. I've never seen a team that looks so awful and yet is on the cusp of being good. It's crazy. What's happening to them is I've never seen anything like it. So I think they could shake it off at any moment. We'll see how that plays out.
I don't think they're going to shake that off in Manhattan, guys. I know we're a ways out from that, but I just can't see K-State losing laps of focus and losing, especially if they find a way to win these next 2 games against West Virginia and Colorado. I can't see K-State losing that game, but I agree. KU's not far, but they're going to have to kick it into gear. They're 1-5. They are 1-5. If they want to make a bowl game, they got to kick it into gear, guys. They still got to play Houston, K-State, Iowa State, BYU, Colorado, and Baylor. So they can only afford to lose one more game if they want to make a bowl. That's a tall ask.
Yep, I agree.
Guys, looking at the Big 12, if I was Lance Leipold, if you tell your team, look around this league, I don't think it wouldn't be a miracle for him to convince his guys that they can still win the Big 12.
No, I agree. You can sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. But that's the Big 12. Someone has to win and someone has to lose. And sometimes you're on the wrong side of that equation. And that seems to be happening across the conference and all of college football this year. That's it for this week's edition of the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by our friends at Fridge Wholesale Liquor. We appreciate you listening. We'll be back tomorrow with the pregame podcast. One of these monkeys will be with me. The other one won't. But the other one will host the Friday walkthrough with our football analyst, Monty Spiller. A lot more previewing of Colorado and K-State coming up here at Go Powercat and on this YouTube channel. Stick with us. We'll take you right through kickoff and into a post-game podcast on Sunday morning.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.